Hello, I'm Chris Scherer, Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and welcome to the June 2026 SBE Webxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting usually posted on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals with more than 4,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE is always looking to stay on top of technology and the latest advances. There's always a new term being thrown about as technology progresses, and the current term or phrase of the day is artificial intelligence. We use AI in our daily lives already, whether we think about it or not, and it's making its way into audio, radio, video, and TV operations more and more. I have two guests today who will share their views on AI in broadcast and media. But first, I have the SBE member update for June 15, 2026. SBE has webinars by SBE, and they are always accessible on demand. The entire library is posted online. Go to sbe.org/webinars and see the current list of what's available and what you might like to learn a little bit more about. Also, each year, the Ennis Educational Foundation Trust offers scholarships to deserving candidates who aspire to a career in the technical aspects of broadcasting. Scholarship awards are used for tuition, room and board, or textbook costs at post-secondary educational institutions or for other technical training programs approved by the Scholarship Committee. Preference will be given to applicants who are SBE members. However, any individuals otherwise eligible, including graduating high school seniors, are encouraged to apply. There are 5 scholarships available. Submit your application by July 1. Get all the details at sbe.org/scholarship. The next SBE certification exam opportunity is in August with an application window that closes today. If you don't want to wait, or if a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or not practical, private proctoring is available. And 2025 marked the 50th anniversary of SBE certification. To recognize the occasion, the SBE program of certification is challenging you to upgrade or obtain your certification through November 2026. Take the CERT Challenge, and you will not only further your professional standing, you could win a great prize. The SBE is also encouraging chapters to hold a meeting to discuss the benefits of SBE certification. This is called CERT Connect, and you can get all the details on both at sbe.org/CertConnect. More information on SBE certification in general is online at sbe.org/certification. The SBE membership year runs April through March. Your renewal was due April 1st, and if you haven't renewed yet, please do so ASAP. You can find the renewal link on the SBE website at the top of the page or under the drop-down menu on a mobile device. And that is your SBE member update for June 15, 2026. So as I mentioned, artificial intelligence is everywhere, and its presence and use continues to grow. We're past the theoretical applications and into the practical use. It's being used for audio and video, radio and TV. On the SBE Webxtra today, we're looking at AI and its use across our industry. I have two guests who work on the manufacturing sides of audio and video, and they will share their insights and views of the state of AI and where it's heading. I'll talk with Marty Sacks, the Executive Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Strategy for Telos Alliance a little bit later. But I'll start with Bob Caniglia, Director of Sales Operations Americas for Blackmagic Design. Hi, Bob. Welcome to the SBE Webxtra. How are you?
Well, thanks. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the opening, AI, the big buzzword everybody talks about these days. So let's jump on that bandwagon a little bit, and at least talk about the TV/video side of things. Starting off, I guess, AI in broadcasting. When I say that phrase, what does that mean to you?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of tools that are being developed or already have been developed that people can use to increase efficiency, things like that. At Blackmagic, we've had AI tools in our editing software, DaVinci Resolve, which does editing, color grading, visual effects, audio, all that stuff. But what it does is it does use a neural engine which is how we started calling it before AI became the buzzword. And people would ask, "Oh, do you do AI?" I'm like, "Oh, we've been doing it for a while," but we just said that we were using this neural engine. Now, one of the things that we like to talk about is that we're trying to do non-generative. We're trying to do assistive AI, right? So speeding up processes, which is always good, especially in newsroom situations, things like that, anything to get quicker to air, that kind of stuff. So we do have some good tools to increase efficiency and make processes go faster.
Sure.
And so we do emphasize that. The other thing that we emphasize is the fact that all of our AI tools are done on the computer that it's working on. So we're not sending information to the cloud or things like that to do the processing. So it's a lot safer for people. People
Hmm.
realize that the integrity of the material they have is being kept on premises.
Gotcha. So you've kind of even dipped the toe in a little bit on the ethical side of things by saying the speeding up processes, perhaps eliminating mundane tasks that are repetitive to the individual. Streamlining, I guess, is a good way to put that.
Right.
Um, I was thinking it might be something we'd wrap up with, but since we've kind of touched on it a little bit, what are your thoughts on some of the ethical applications or implications of AI and using it in the workplace?
Right. I think that, I think probably there'll need to be some tools put in, regulations, whatnot, to, eliminate the truly fake news, so you
Yeah,
don't want that kind of stuff. And I think that people smarter than I and people at different levels would probably have to figure a way to implement things, in metadata or whatever, to make sure that people understand what's being created out of thin air versus what is actually happening. So those things need to be sorted out by regulation or whatever. The other thing is that everybody has access to a lot of new AI tools that can create tools for them and things like that. So we're sort of in the early days all around, even though some of us have some rather developed tools already. I think that the future holds lots of different options. But yeah, I
sure,
uh, yeah, the moral issue is definitely a struggle for a lot of people. And, it's why we try to emphasize what we're doing and trying to do a lot of assistive things, things that, speed up processes. And again, as I say, in live environments, that's key.
sure. Are there any other pitfalls involved in AI that you're thinking about? I say you, the royal you, Blackmagic, or you personally for that matter, that you want to be careful of or cognizant of going forward?
I think that we're trying to emphasize what we're doing so that people understand what the tool does, how it works, things like that, so that we're not pulling the wool over anyone's eyes in certain areas, right? So that you can, analyze the tool and decide if it's useful, but also is it doing something that you or the company that doesn't want it to, that the company using the tool doesn't want to use it because it does things that is against them or whatever. So I think the more openness we are with the process that we're using and the way that we're doing it, I think gives people the opportunity to make the choices for themselves.
Hmm. Sure. So on the very basic level, it makes me even think some people don't even realize there are AI tools being used for some really, let's call them entry level
Mhm.
steps. Uh, what's the most basic? Where does it begin as far as applying the technology to what we're doing these days?
Right. So, I mean, in our space, we have some ability to translate audio, right? So that can work in anything where it provides the text for the audio. So you can, that's great for when, you're either doing closed captioning or you're just trying to get a transcript from the audio. So, we do that now. That is done with some AI capabilities to be able to pull that off. And actually, sometimes I confuse. I say, "Oh, this one must use AI." No, that tool doesn't. This tool does. So we try to emphasize which ones do, which ones don't. Like we have things like the magic mask, right? So that's a thing where, say, we're, at the end of this interview, someone decides that that name brand guitar behind you shouldn't be in the shot, and there's a way to take that out, relatively easily, that of course we could do manually, but that would take forever. But if there's a tool like Magic Mask, then it goes out, and so it's those kind of things that there are tools that use AI. I mean, even basic tools, like for instance, I was going to an appointment this morning that I go to regularly, and, Waze pops up and says, "Are you going to this?" Because it knows that about this time on these days I go there. So it asked me if I was going. Well, that's artificial. That's not me telling it, "Hey, remind me on these days." That's
Yeah.
that just that accumulates. Let's see, this guy goes to this place 3 times a week around this time. Perhaps that's where he wants to go. So, those are assistive AI kind of things that happen in just our regular lives. Because the funny thing is, I think, is that this buzzword of AI came about a few years ago, but AI itself isn't new. And like I say, we had tools 10 years ago. So it's just people are catching on, but that's sort of the way that works. And unfortunately, many people think that AI is all for doom and gloom, but that's not really true.
Right.
We have elevators instead of stairs. I mean, there are things that come along that are actually good for everybody. So I think and this will be the same thing where will find ways to limit how it's being used, or companies will take stances and say, well, we don't do this, and again, that can become a marketing thing.
Sure. We've probably touched on, I think so far, things that could probably fit under the automation type heading, routine tasks, translation you had mentioned, captioning perhaps,
Hmm.
metadata tagging, and even content indexing, I think are probably some of the more common
Hmm.
automation tasks. What about, say, live production or integration or infrastructure type issues?
Yeah, so there are. I think there's opportunities to help with processes down the road, right? So I can imagine in the future that, I don't know, camera framing or whatever. But I mean, we already use a lot. There are already tools out there that do that, that where camera people aren't on behind the cameras. They're
Hmm.
using PTZ heads, things like that. And there are tools that do some reframing. We have some tools in our software that help with reframing. So if things aren't shot properly, you can do that. And so there. I think those are some of the things that we could see. I wonder if, like in the broader scope, if we could, if you use AI tools to assist people. So, like, reminders of things like the master control operator fell asleep and, buzzed his, and, those kind of things. So
Put some
maybe
electrodes
there's a
on the
way.
chair.
Yeah, as somebody who had to do overnight master control at Disney Channel in the 80s, I bought my first alarm watch with an alarm because of it. So yeah, I think that there are probably some things that would be helpful, and then there's other things we haven't even thought of. And I think that's the beauty of all of this, is that there are tools that will come that we may not be thinking about today, but just people. There's always a problem that somebody wants to solve, and it would be great if, right? Wouldn't it be nice if, we used to call them Wibneys when I worked at one company, and they used to say, wouldn't it be nice if it did this or that or whatever, and it was like a wish list. And so I'm sure there's lots of those.
Sure. Um, Implementation costs, infrastructure requirements. What kind of things should do you advise people to keep in mind as they're considering
Yeah.
going down this route?
Well, I think it all depends on the tools. Blackmagic makes some tools that are either free or fairly low cost that help there. As we delve more into an IP centric facility, we just launched a whole bunch of products for that too, trying to still keep cost in mind, but knowing that many people want to move to this IP centric workflow and things like that. So a lot of the movement for centralization and things like that has already out there.
Hmm.
but maybe some of these tools going forward can assist even more with that, or make it easier for people to work remotely, even though the facility is somewhere else, things like that. So, yeah, I think that there's opportunities for people um, to do their jobs no matter where they are. It's already working in remote production.
Hmm.
The replay operators are at home. But they need good bandwidth. They're going to need some tools there to be able to pull that off. But it's definitely doable today. It'll probably be even more doable in the future.
Sure. And as we continue to, well, move forward and AI continues to evolve, um, users are going to think of it less and less. It's going to be just a tool that's there, I think, in many ways.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there are already tools that we've been using that have it that we don't think about because it just does it, right? They're
Right.
not thinking about, it was only this call that made me go, why does Waze know that I'm going there? Why does it ask me that? So,
Because it's Big
um,
Brother and it's keeping an eye on you and reporting back to the.
right, not that anyone cares whether I go to the gym, but so I think that that is one of the things that people don't realize until someone points it out. Well, actually, you have a cell phone. I mean, there are a lot of things that are already using artificial intelligence to find you or whatever. Now, we as I say, there's categories of artificial intelligence. Some of it's good, some of it's wonky. We've all seen the photos with a person with six fingers and, all of that
Yeah.
comes out. And getting spoofed by AI is, a common thing. Fortunately, the young kids spot it much faster than older people. Uh, so, if I hear the phrase mom, that's AI one more time, I'll,
Yeah.
it's, but that's part of it. And, it's a revolution. It's something, I remember when HD was coming out. I remember, when everything was digital, and
Right.
what did that mean? And and so I think that's just another evolution, and there'll be the ups and downs and the good things and the bad things, and eventually it'll all go sift through the colander, and we'll we'll get the good stuff, like mining for gold. So we'll be mining for AI tools.
And we've transitioned pretty well so far from early analog to current state of digital, which will
Yeah.
continue to evolve. What do you think's on the horizon? What are some next steps?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see what else we do. I think there have been many people trying to raise the flag of, hey, I think there need to be better rules, and I agree with that. There's a lot of rules that need to be implemented. It's not a, it's not incumbent upon the manufacturers to implement the rules. Obviously, that's a different place,
Hmm.
um,
Sure.
but we can definitely see it's sort of like anything. I mean, there's HDMI handshaking, right? We had that where it's like you can't pass every signal. You have to be compliant and things like, so the compliance part of it is something that I'm sure we're going to have to get to. And, we'll see how that goes. It doesn't stop us from creating tools, and at some point people may have to make choices. I think that we'll see, hopefully, some people put some guidelines down, but I think it's incumbent upon the stations themselves as to what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow, or if they're going to put up some AI video or whatever that was created, they're going to have to mention that this didn't really happen. This is a simulation. This is those kind of things. So hopefully that happens. I mean, you think about all those television commercials where they show these stunning images on the TVs and then, simulated image.
Right.
So I think, we're going to have to see some of that demarcation. But in the meantime, everyone is out there trying to leverage the tools that are here today. And of course, they keep expanding, and we'll find out what we have. It'll be an interesting conversation that we could have in 3, 5, 10 years, just to see where this path has actually gone. And I'm sure you and I would both go, I didn't see that coming. Well, that was cool. That's, that's
So
part of,
in a way, AI, I mean, it's an equalizer in a way. think of a very small production facility versus, I mean, you mentioned Disney, you mentioned any of the large, big houses. AI tools kind of level the playing field a little bit, give the small guy a chance to really output something of some extremely high quality, and more complex than perhaps he thought he could do in the first place.
Yeah, I think that has come along the way in a lot of ways. Like, for
Sure.
instance, so in the, it's been a long time, 80s, 90s, early 90s, maybe, I went to a bunch of editing schools to learn the edit controllers, back in the CMX days, Grass Valley, even early Avid, and Avid cost a lot of money back then, so all those tools that you had to learn to work at a television station or whatever, you never had your hands on it until you actually worked at the place. Whereas today, because of the lower cost to entry, a lot of it done by us, but others, people are exposed to tools so much earlier than they were. Before the digital film cameras started coming out, you had a choice to shoot, uh, you know, shoot on tape that
Hmm.
that fooled nobody or film, right? So that was your choice.
Right.
Whereas today there are digital film cameras that are not a lot of money and they make stunning images, and so
True.
you tell a better story, who would know what you used or how much it cost or any of these things. So those tools are there. Now, on top of that, you add some AI sophistication, and now you're really talking a level playing field, as you mentioned.
Right. Yeah. Kind of what I was going for in there. So yeah, but good explainer, good walkthrough. So what else? Is there something we haven't touched on that you think's important to mention when it comes to thinking about
Hmm.
AI on the video side of things?
Well, as I say, I think one of the things that people, I don't know that a lot of people have delved into, even I haven't, that there are ways to create, if you have a thing that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a technical thing to try and control things, whatever, you can build your own app. I was at NAB and a guy came to me and he says, "Oh, we're using a whole bunch of your cameras. We're shooting in 360 and all this stuff." And there was no one app to control all the cameras, so I had it made through AI. And I went, huh? He said, yeah, I have a service, and I told it what I wanted, and it went, we went through it a couple of times and showed me the app and said, this is the app I built to do what I need. And I said, well, now that is something. He says, I don't write code. He didn't write code, of course,
Sure.
but he was able to accomplish that. I think, if you're a chief engineer somewhere or whatever, and you go, boy, it would be really nice if we had control over this and we could use an iPad to look at this or what. I think there are ways to get custom stuff that maybe we're not looking at right now. And I think that's an opportunity for sure.
Excellent. I hadn't even thought of that opportunity as well. There's a whole nother angle there. Wow, that's great. Of course, I'm the radio guy, so I think more audio orientation on a lot of things. Video is kind of my second language, maybe my fourth actually. Uh,
Well, but
uh,
when you think of audio in general, right, on the radio side, either way, right, you still need to transcribe interviews to make sure they said what that you think they said, all that, so there's a lot of that. And then controlling what goes on when, and there's a lot of similarities in a way. It's just I've seen tools over time. I worked at a company years ago that made an audio board for video, in an old linear edit suite. But some radio guys saw it and were like, "Hey, we could use those tools, and let's make a radio version of it." And
sure,
we hadn't thought of it because we weren't in that space, but sure enough, it worked. So yeah, I think a lot of times there are some cross things. So hopefully, ideas can come about where people say, "Oh, well, we don't have to do the video part of that, but all the audio is definitely germane to us because it's the
sure.
same thing." So yeah, hopefully people pick up some cues from on both sides of it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, this has been interesting. I appreciate you taking some time today and sharing
Yep.
your thoughts and letting us peek a little bit under the hood in some cases as to what's potentially in store for us. I'm going to turn over to the audio radio side and see what we can unveil over there. But again, thanks for joining me on the SBE Webxtra today, Bob. Appreciate the time.
Thanks. Anytime.
So now that we've talked about the video and TV side of AI, let's look at the audio radio side. I've got Marty Sacks, the Executive Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Strategy with Telos Alliance. Hey, Marty, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. It's great to see you, and thanks for having me.
Good. Always good to see you. It's been a while since we've had a chance to sit down and really talk about a whole bunch of things, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too.
So I mentioned we're here talking about the broad topic of AI. What does that mean in the audio radio area of things in our broadcasting worlds? Let me start with the open question. What does AI and broadcast technology mean to you? How do you view it?
It's funny you should ask that because clearly a lot of us are thinking a lot about this topic right now. I don't know anybody that doesn't use Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude multiple times a day now. So, the idea of it helping us do our sort of admin work naturally leads into the idea of, okay, so, how do we use it in broadcast workflows? I would tell you that as we think about it, we're very serious about sort of separating the hype from how it can really work. So one of the things that I always kind of joke about is there was a IBC several years ago, right after AES 67 was made a standard. I think it was like 2015 maybe, and it's going back a ways. 2013, it's a little bit of a blur, but that show, everybody and their mother had AES 67 stenciled on the back wall of their booth.
Yeah.
And there are a few of us at Telos that kind of chuckled because, of course, we've been doing the AOIP thing since the early 2000s. And, and AES 67 is integral to, to AOIP in terms of, how that actually happens. And so we kind of chuckled, like, where you guys been, right? But it's like everything else. It's the popular thing, so people talk about it, but they don't always understand, sort of the backstory, and more importantly, what does it mean to me, right? And how would I use it? So that's one of the things we just chuckle about that because we're unfortunately at times we're so on the bleeding edge that we're kind of like waiting for people to catch up, and and so when they do, we kind of want to guide them well, and that's one of the things that Telos is well known for 40 years is, helping people make sense out of all these acronyms.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And it's funny, you mentioned we don't really have a choice when it comes to Gemini and some of the tools that are out there. They're in place. We're using them whether we know it or not. So congratulations, you've already embraced AI in your daily life.
It's pretty funny because my big thing right now, and of course, I don't think anybody really cares about what's important to Marty, but one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time doing is figuring out how ChatGPT connects to my other apps, through the MCP protocol, and trying to get my ChatGPT to tell me what my schedule is going to be and what emails are most important for me to get to. And so, I'm still fooling around with this stuff. And anyway, still trying to figure out, how to make it my own. But it's just funny how, how AI is definitely, you get a little bit and then you want more and then you want more after that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well, you kind of touched on it on the radio audio side, and again, a wide open question: what can AI do for us? Start small and dream big. What do you got for us?
So it's a great question because there are a couple of different roads that you can go down. So, for instance, not specifically related to just our radio business, but we have a file-based audio processing product that called Audio Tools Server, or Audio Tools Focus in one of its forms. And we've introduced AI functionality into that product that specifically looks at dialogue intelligibility, right? So, this thing we do all the time with turning on captions and turning up the volume, for the dramatic part of the show and then turning it down when the commercial shows up.
Right.
So we have functionality inside the system that uses AI tools to figure out, the level of intelligibility of dialogue. It can also, we've also have a module in there that has the ability to identify languages and has the ability also to separate pieces of content that have already been pre-produced and, mixed down to 2-track, if you will, from a multi-track, if you think about it that way. And we can actually use AI to separate stems of audio from a finally produced piece. So that would be one example of how AI can work in the workflow. I think the main thing to talk about there is the fact that we've been very focused, going back to what we talked about a moment ago, hype versus reality, but we're really focused on the reasons where that AI should be used. So, for instance, we're not big proponents of use AI to replace a person. We think that's fundamentally wrong. That's fundamentally not a good use for AI. What we believe is that AI is useful to make people more useful. Okay, so in other words, let's say you're a radio programmer and you're responsible for multiple radio stations, we'll say. To be able to use AI features and functionality to create music logs so that you can spend more time, focused as a programmer in enhancing and improving the overall content of your radio station, to us, that is where AI should be used. Or for instance, let's say, for instance, that there's a repeatable kind of a thing that happens in your audio path, to be able to analyze that, to be able to make arrangements to adjust for that, whatever that is. Okay, so I'll give you one other sort of application of that. It involves observability. So, what would you do differently if you could have something was consistently watching different parts of your program path and could tell you whether you were having an off-air event, or let's say, for instance, you had the wrong program material on a specific channel and you could identify that. These are the kinds of things that we think AI is perfectly suited for. Having a human monitor 100 radio stations versus having AI do it, that to us is pretty interesting. So again, not getting into a lot of detail here, because much of what we're doing now is in the design phase or actually being tested. But the idea would be that it goes all the way back to how to make us as people, especially as broadcasters, people who've been around the industry a long time, how do you make us more effective? That's what we think is the calling for AI.
Absolutely. And you touched on one of the things in my notes that I thought we'd get to a little bit later, but the ethical responsibilities of using AI. You touched on that right away. Enhancing the job of someone as opposed to replacing the job of someone. I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think everybody can kind of agree that that's a better way to view it than, if I get rid of these 20 people, I can do it with one, AI bot type thing. Yeah, that doesn't help anybody. So other than the bottom line, which is not what it's all about.
No, there's no question. In fact, one of the things that, we've always believed in using technology to do things better, or to do more things, as opposed to just, as a straight financial calculation. And don't get me wrong, there are ways to save money, and to be more efficient financially, right, and overall. And we certainly don't say ignore that, don't make that a priority, but it's certainly not at the expense of people, because quite frankly, the industry has drawn way down with respect to people. What we want to do is we want to compete with the other services out there that want our listeners. We want our listeners back, right? And the way to do that is to make our content more compelling, to make everything about what we do much more attractive to listeners, and technology can play a huge part in that. So that's the way we think about that. Is we want our customers. We have customers all over the place, not just broadcasters, but we want our broadcaster customers to be successful. We want them to have sustainable businesses. and we want them to keep coming back and and spending time with us. So that's a big motivation for us.
Sure. So we've looked at I've looked at several areas of interest or focus, I guess, in implementing AI. You touched a little bit on one in the live production side, like monitoring of multiple stations. Automation side, I mean, there are routine tasks or captioning in the case of video, or perhaps transcription in the radio. Other mundane tasks. Do you see some other potential outlets there on the automation side?
We do. We have relationships with a number of the folks that provide automation as we know it today, and there are several of them that we work with that are moving very strongly into AI created content. So when I say AI created content, let me just be clear. Again, we're not talking about automated voices here.
Okay.
What we are talking about is intelligent music scheduling, the intelligent sort of assembly of a hour or multiple hours of programming. We're talking about cloud-based infrastructure that basically takes away the need for some level of local facility. Doesn't remove it all, but it definitely helps to make it more efficient. So these kinds of folks we are working with, and specifically a lot of what we're looking at with these particular kinds of users of AI or suppliers of AI created material is how to interface on the cloud, back on the ground. So, they're doing the majority of their work in the cloud, but their local microphones, their local speakers, right? Their local telephone callers, those kinds of things need to be integrated. So again, we're not just looking to create a bunch of jukeboxes. We want to create compelling local content or help the creation of compelling local content. So part of what we're doing on the AI side of things with some of these automation suppliers is to help them make the necessary connections so that they have the best of both worlds. They have the efficiency that comes from AI created content with the local content that can only be created on the local scale, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. So we're trying to help enable that. That's one more step that we're taking into the AI future. But again, we're more along the side of than we are sort of the key company doing the creation. We're part of a consortium, you might say.
Gotcha. You mentioned integration, which is actually something I was looking at discussing a little bit more. What kind of integration issues do you see as far as implementing some of these AI tools into existing infrastructure or even future builds as they come along?
It's a really great question, Chris, because quite frankly, a lot of systems right now are one of a kind. They're a bit like a unicorn, right? And I think that's pretty typical and pretty much expected at this stage, right?
Sure.
Because everybody is doing it slightly differently. Everybody has a different idea of how much they want to do and how they want to do it. Is it cloud? Is it on-prem? Is it some sort of hybrid? How much, so how deep do they want to get into this? And again, this sort of goes side by side with a lot of the work we've been doing on virtualized workflows. So, this idea that, do you want it on-prem? Do you want to do this work in the cloud? Do you have some combination? Some cities you want this, some cities you want that. So I think we're in early days. We've stood up a DevOps group, and their job is very much focused in figuring out, how do all these pieces fit together. We've got some clients internationally as well, let's put it this way. We have some folks in Europe and also in Asia Pacific that are as well as domestic folks, and we're having conversations, and we're in various stages of completing projects. We got a couple POCs going as well, but we're at the point now where we've been doing this long enough where we have some projects underway, and we hope to talk more about these. Right now, there's a pretty strong level of NDA, to play with some of these folks because they don't want their competitors finding out kind of how
Sure.
they're doing and what they're doing. But overall, we're still in very early stages, I would say, in terms of, how exactly most people are going to do this. And that's one of the things that was pretty interesting. I'll go off on a rabbit trail just slightly on NAB. So, of course, we're at NAB 2026 just a couple months ago. And we had people walk into the booth who we've been talking to about virtualization for 5 years. I mean, basically since COVID. And we were surprised at how the people who were very much a wait and see are now, how do I get started?
Sure.
So I think that it's like anything else. You tell the story and tell the story and tell the story, and ultimately, people are coming along. And so it was very fascinating for us. I could name you some names, some people you wouldn't recognize their names. You know these people personally, and the fact that they're like past the oh gee whiz, golly, that's cool, to how do I do that? How soon
Right.
can you help me get started? I was frankly a little surprised, but pleasantly, because we've been telling the story for a while.
Interesting. So, what about the infrastructure side of all this? And again, so much of this is just kind of wide open and undefined at this point. So it could be anything. So maybe some of this is Marty's opinion versus established fact at this point. But how does this all get tied in? Even going down to costs, infrastructure requirements, and even the specialized expertise that someone may need.
This is absolutely the right question. It's about, ultimately it's about implementing. What does that cost? And how do I do that? And should I do that? What should I do? These are all really key questions. So, a couple of big rocks in the jar, so to speak. One is as much of an IP infrastructure as you can have, the better. So, trying to do this in any other way than to have some sort of level or layer of AOIP in your facility, it's pretty hard to do. So, so for anybody watching this or listening to this, getting ready to make decisions, you definitely want IP infrastructure. You don't want to be buying a TDM router. You don't want to be, replacing an analog studio with another analog studio.
Sure.
I love analog. You and I grew up in the days of analog, but that's not going to be cloud friendly. That's not going to be IT friendly. And again, we're trying to take components that the IT industry has done the R&D on and has proven, and what we want to do is reuse that for our special application. So IP is really a key in all this. And again, I guess that might be a little bit of major obvious talking, but anyway, IP is key. I think the other part is to have a very clear idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So this is definitely one of those where you want to avoid the ready, fire, aim tendency.
Right.
And sometimes we get in, in our industry where, hey, the lease is over and, in 60 days, we got to get moved, and our hair's on fire. We have to do a better job of anticipating and planning because unfortunately, last minute doesn't necessarily equate to good planning. And if you don't plan well, these kinds of things don't go well. So the idea of giving yourself a little bit more time to think it through, ask some great questions. And I would also tell you, and I thought this is somewhat self-serving, but I would say you need a good partner, because most of us at the station level and even at the corporate level, a lot of us have not gone through this before.
Sure.
We need somebody who can help coach us, guide us, help us to ask the right questions. And that's something that that there are a number of companies. Telos is not the only one that can do this.
Right.
But we do. We have invested very heavily. I mentioned before about DevOps, and we've been creating products that have been x86 based now for 25 years. So so we definitely have learned some places where we've done things right, and we've had to go back and fix some things. But overall, it's been a great learning experience, and our team has developed a great deal of expertise. But I would tell you, a partner that really understands this stuff is important.
Sure.
Those are the sort of the top three that just right off the top of my mind. If I were talking to a group CEO, I was in New York and sitting down in one of those tall buildings and talking to somebody, and they said, "What do you think?" Those are the three things I would say immediately. Is just that's the way that you need to think about that.
Cool. So what haven't we covered? What else is out there that, wow, yeah, talk about another wide open question. What have we not talked about yet that you particularly think is important to cover, or put in someone's mind at this point?
It's a really good question. I will tell you that I think from a standpoint of, hey, give me the flyover, right? Help me to think about this in 20 minutes-ish, right? I would tell you, I think, this is a really good start. I think maybe the last thing I would say is maybe I would talk a little bit to people that are watching this that maybe think, hey, that's a lot of hype. Maybe you would refer to them, not negatively, but you would say they're naysayers, maybe a little bit skeptical.
Yeah.
And guess what? Skepticism is healthy, right? Because guess what? That anybody that has a microphone and a IP address is now an expert, right? So I think it's very healthy to approach these kinds of things with almost from I'm from Missouri. I need to be shown, right? So I would just say for folks that maybe are feeling like too much, too soon, this is going too fast, I'm not comfortable with this, I would say I absolutely get it. I think, I'm a 67-year-old guy. There have been a lot of turns of the crank in terms of technology.
Mm-hmm.
When I started out in the business, I was a snot-nosed kid at 14 years old, hanging around a television station in Washington.
I think we all were at one point.
Yeah. And guess what? I remember 2-inch quad videotape, right? And I remember that I thought I was really something when I could set up a videotape machine. So, that a lot has changed since then. And I would just say that I would approach this with an open mind. I would find people that I trust, listen to them. I would ask lots of questions, but I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. And I think that's the thing that I've learned from working for a company for decades now that has done new things, has blazed a lot of trails, is that, I've gotten to the point where, I can accept new things pretty easily. But you know what? If I was at the station, I'm still a station guy, or even a corporate engineer, because I did that for a little while, short period of time. I would be, I'd be looking around going, hey, holding onto my wallet with both hands, or my company's wallet. There's no question that the economic model changes when you go from the way we've always done it, capital expenditures, amortized over some period of time, depreciated, and to an OpEx model, which, some of this, not all of it, but some of this is going to be more of a monthly expense, right? And that changes things a little bit, depending on the kind of company you are. Are you private? Are you public? How does Wall Street look at you, kind of thing? These are the kinds of questions that are certainly worthy of considerable thought. But I would just say to the people that are a little skeptical, hang with us, right? Hang in there, keep listening. I would invite anybody that watches this, has questions about this, to reach out to me personally. I'd be more than happy to have conversations with anybody that has interest in this. And and I'm not the heavy sale guy. I'm more of the, let's talk about what you're doing there, and let's figure out if this makes sense for you. And let me introduce you to some of the folks on our team that might be able to be of some service. So, our attitude about this is, we want to make sure people aren't dismissing it out of hand. because guess what? By dismissing it out of hand, we sort of automatically put our industry a step behind everybody else. We don't want to do that. We want to take advantage so we have more of an ability to compete with the other folks out there that want, like we talked about at the beginning, they want to steal the eyes and steal our ears of the people that we've served for decades. Right. So that's really, the way I think about that. Hopefully that answers your question. It wasn't exactly what you asked, but.
Oh, yeah, this is like, we're on a new frontier once again. Here we are looking at what's ahead. We're making it up as we go. So sure, it all fits. Fine by me. Anything we haven't covered that you wanted to touch on?
No, other than really appreciate what you're doing here. I'm looking forward to seeing what my colleague who you've already interviewed has to say, and we're all learning together. So nobody's got this locked down, but we're all hopefully helping each other make progress, and that's really what SBE is all about and has been for decades. So I have a lot of respect for the organization. All of us at Telos are thankful for. We had an SBE meeting at the office not too long ago, and Frank was on with the LA chapter last week, I think it was. So yeah, we're big believers in SBE and the work that you guys do. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks for the kind words as well. Always appreciate to hear that. So, and thanks for your support of the SBE too. So it's a good mutual arrangement. So,
happy.
Well, Marty, great talking to you today. Thanks for taking a few minutes and sharing your thoughts and some of your company's views on where AI is headed in the, at least on the radio and audio side. So once again, thanks for being part of the SBE Webxtra.
Good to see you, Chris. Take care. Be well.
Thanks for watching the SBE Webxtra, the SBE chapter of the web from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. If you have an idea for a topic or a guest for the SBE Webxtra, send it to webextra@sbe.org. Thanks again to Bob Caniglia of Blackmagic Design and Marty Sacks of Telos Alliance for joining me today. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE Webxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G. That's attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. And once again, thanks for watching. I'm Chris Scherer, SBE Communications Director, and I'll see you next month.